Arriving in a helicopter are the Aldemir Republic Special Elite Forces, codename Ghost. These soldiers are the world's premier special forces unit, feared by soldiers and terrorist organizations worldwide. And amongst them stands a man called the Strongest, George Sai. Witnessing him annihilate enemies like a killing machine, people called him with reverence and awe, Mr. War. However, on July 6th, 2025, this strongest man would be met with death in battle. On July 6th, 2025, 2:16 a.m., a helicopter carrying the elite forces flies over a church-like building, and they are on an elimination operation to eliminate the terrorist organization Ignite. With strong wind blowing around their landing point, the pilot informs the soldiers of it, saying that the strong winds are destabilizing the aircraft. Calling out to their captain Beck, he tells him that they should change the drop zone. Hearing that, the captain asks if this means that their surprise attack is ruined. Speaking into his earbud, he commands his soldiers to proceed as planned, while thinking to himself that if they were to charge in like this, half of their squad will die. Suddenly, George stands by the door while holding a rope in his hand. Seeing that, the captain rushes to him, asking him as to what he is trying to do. Standing by the window while holding his gun up, he looks back and tells the captain that they should go ahead and rendezvous with the other at point B. Without waiting to hear or speak any further, George jumps off the helicopter holding onto his rope. He then lands on the ground, striking up a heroic pose. The captain then asks the pilot if there is any possibility for them to turn back. Hearing that, the pilot in a hurry says that it's pretty impossible to do. Looking away, he tells the pilot to head to point B while thinking to himself that George better not die. After having landed, George wastes no time and runs towards the door to the inside. As he continues to run towards the door, a little something shines to his side at a faraway distance which George seems to have not noticed. It is a sniper aiming at George, and he suddenly shoots after getting a proper aim at George. While running towards the door, as the sniper shoots, he suddenly hears the sound of the gun and increases his speed and hides behind a statue. Hiding behind the statue, with bullets hitting away at it, he makes out the location of the sniper just by analyzing the direction from which the bullets were hitting the statue. After learning the sniper's location, he suddenly leans out of the statue and shoots. And surprisingly, all the bullets he shot hits the sniper and his dead body falls to the ground. Suddenly, an enemy appears behind him, holding him with a gun to his head. As the enemy just shoots, George turns around and attacks his hand with his elbow. Following with a low sweep, he messes up the enemy's balance. With agile movement, he arrives right behind the enemy, snapping his neck. Having killed the enemy in hand, he soon notices other enemy forces coming his way, holding guns, while telling himself how they finally arrived. Without wasting any further time, the enemy forces start shooting at him. He then pulls up the enemy whose neck he just snapped, using him as a meat shield while he shoots back at the enemy forces. Using the meat shield, he rushes back to the statue and then throws it off and suddenly starts shooting at them while aiming through his scope, killing them. With smoke coming out of his gun's muzzle from the constant firing, he suddenly receives a call on his shoulder walkie-talkie. It's the captain. He's asking him to respond if he's safe. As the sound bothers him, he mutes his walkie-talkie and stealthily walks towards the door in front of him. At a different location, point B, the special elite forces are gathered outside of a door as the captain calls out to someone on the walkie-talkie. A soldier standing behind the captain informs him that they're ready for breach and asks him as to where George is. Replying to his question, the captain tells him how George is not responding to communications. And suddenly, the door they were standing in front of starts to open. Seeing that, the captain and the forces with him get into position to shoot. The captain looks surprised seeing the person who appears. The person that appears through the door is George. He points behind him, telling them that the compound is secured and he needs the captain to handle SSE. As they walk through the sea of corpses created by George, a soldier looks around saying how Mr. War is still a monster as always, while the other soldiers behind them carry a body or two. As they continue walking forward, the captain calls out to George. Pulling him by grabbing his t-shirt, he asks him as to why he acted alone. He then says that those who can't follow orders have no place on the team. George simply just replies saying that the mission is a success and that there's no problem. With cold eyes, he tells the captain that if they had forced the operation in that situation, the unit would have been wiped out and that the captain too knew that possibility. While gritting his teeth, the captain lets out a grunt, calling George a smart mouth. A soldier then approaches them from behind and informs the captain that the commanding officer is calling for him. The captain turns back and walks away lightly, cussing at George as how he always defies orders. As he continues, George interferes, telling him not to misunderstand. Holding his hand by his chest, He says that if there's a way for him to repay the captain, it's only by killing enemies and winning. With a serious yet blank look on his face, he says that he doesn't want to defy him, and that it's for the objective. He looks back at him silently. He turns his head back, embarrassed by his touching speech. Calling him an idiot, he tells him to just go and die. Walking into the vehicle, he tells his soldiers that he's heading to headquarters and that they should do as he instructed them earlier. As the vehicle goes, while looking at the back of the vehicle, George thinks to himself as to what did the captain mean when he said to do as he instructed earlier. He then turns towards the soldiers, asking them as to what instructions did the captain when he said that, only to be surprised by the soldiers holding their guns pointing at him. Pointing their guns at him, one of the soldiers apologizes to him, saying that it's the captain's orders. George then stealthily tries to reach out to his gun on his thigh. With the command to open fire, a bullet directly hits George right in the middle of his temple, splattering blood around. As he gets ravaged by the incoming bullets hitting him, he thinks to himself as to what they meant when they said that they're doing this on Beck's orders. He then questions if Beck planned to kill him from the beginning. He then thinks of a girl named Sophia, thinking to himself that he will definitely come back alive. He then slowly opens his eyes, finding a rotten dead body, with bugs crawling out of its face in front of his eyes as he thinks to himself, realizing that it's the stench of death. Standing in between a pile of rotten corpses, he thinks to himself as to what just happened and that he was definitely in the Ignite elimination operation. And the truck he found himself in suddenly starts unloading the dead bodies into the sea. He then falls over as he loses his footing as the corpses slide down due to the inclined plane. Due to his sharp reflexes, he holds the ground, saving himself from falling into the sea. He then pulls himself up, saying how he just cheated death. He then looks down at the rotten corpse being eaten by an eagle and thinks to himself if these are the front lines of Bizal district. The drivers of the rotten corpse dump truck talk between themselves, saying how hectic garbage cleanup for morning is, while one of them says to think of it as feeding the fish in Tokyo Bay. Looking at the dump truck as it moves forwards, he speaks to himself, saying that if this is Tokyo Bay, then he's in Japan, his homeland, and so the story goes on with George Sai dying on July 6, 2025, and being reincarnated on the island of despair. Looking at the truck, he thinks to himself that the only way he can get some proper information on his location would be that truck over there getting away from him. He then runs through the forest at full speed, hoping to catch the truck, only to be left behind as it drives away, leaving only tire marks for him to follow behind. He stands there with his hand on his chest, panting, thinking to himself how he's just getting winded from just this much running, and asks himself as to what has happened to his body. Looking up at the tree he's standing beside, he thinks to himself that he should first secure water and food for himself. He then climbs up the tree and sits on a branch and drinks water from a bamboo-like bottle. As he rests by the tree, he lets out a sigh, thinking to himself as to how this scenario reminds him of the time when he got separated from friendly forces in the jungle. As he's chilling, sitting on a tree, his eyes fall on a slum-like town bustling with people. He soon enters the town and looks around while thinking to himself as how this area surely seems to be around Tokyo Bay, but Japan never had a slum as such according to his memories. He then suddenly notices a broken mirror in a stand beside him. He looks at the mirror, surprised from seeing himself. Holding his hands up to his face as he looks at himself through the shattered mirror, he thinks to himself, asking if this person is really him and that he looks completely different from his past self. As he still looks at the mirror in surprise, suddenly someone puts a hand on his shoulder, calling out the name Michio. Michio is the name of the person whose body George Sai has been reincarnated into. Though his body and physical traits have been changed, his skills and instincts remain the same. He then suddenly grabs the person by his throat. Surprised by his sudden aggressive behavior, he worriedly tells him to snap out of it and gives him his name, that is Mesa, and tells him to calm down. He then finally lets go of Masa, while thinking to himself, asking if this Masa guy is an acquaintance of this body he has reincarnated into. He soon notices that this person doesn't possess any weapons and realizes that this body's name is Michio. As Masa falls to his knees, breathing heavily, Michio apologizes for his rash behavior and holds out his hand for Masa to take and stand up. Holding his hand, Masa says that he's relieved to see him well and tells him how worried he was since he was getting beaten up so much. As Masa takes his hand away, Michio asks him if it's true that he was getting beaten and further asks him as to why he was getting beaten. Surprised by his behavior, Masa tells him that at the mining site, whatever Zaha says is absolute. Suddenly, a huge-statured person with braids appears behind Masa, asking he just called Zaha without using honorifics. This person is Zaha, Putting his hands together, he asks him as to how dare a crew member such as Masa himself, a slave miner, call Zaha without using honorifics. Pulling his hands back, ready to punch at Masa, he screams out as to how it calls for a penalty for daring to call his name without using honorifics. His punch then hits Masa, throwing him back, way further back into a wall. Zaha then walks towards Masa and grabs him by his hair, asking if he's stupid to remember the rules, and repeats it for him, saying that he gets a penalty whenever he makes a mistake, and that he'll also get penalized if he annoys him. Scared, not knowing what to say anymore, he simply just points at Michio in fear, to protect himself from getting any more beaten up, and says that it was Michio who called him without honorifics first, and then mentions how that made him get carried away in the flow of the conversation. Zaha stands up and throws Masa aside as he walks towards Michio, saying that it's amazing how he's still alive after all the beating he gave him. Cracking up his fingers with a proud and huge grin on his face, Zaha mentions how he's raging to give him a nice good beating, shouting out penalty for having an insolent face. Zaha swings out a punch at him, which Michio swiftly dodges while thinking to himself as to how amateurish of a punch this guy is throwing at him. Ducking to another swing of his while getting ready to throw a punch at him, Michio says that he has no hobby of fighting civilians, but if he is going to continue attacking him like this, then he'll subdue him. Hearing him say that, Zaha commends him for knowing how to talk big. Using his bodily force, he strikes him with a straight punch right into his face. That powerless punch of Michio does as little as scratch his nose and push him back, enraging him. He then dashes at Zaha at full speed while thinking to himself as to how weaker this body is than he thought of it to be. Seeing him rush towards him, Zaha instinctively throws a punch at him, which Michio easily dodges. Turning his body at the right moment, he thinks to himself that even with this frail body, if he were to use his elbow with proper momentum, it'll have sufficient strength to at least injure him, and his elbow suddenly hits Zaha right on his nose, pushing it in. Holding onto his nose, Zaha falls to his knees, seeing that Michio tells him that it is impossible for Zaha to subdue him with his combat ability. Glaring at Zaha, he tells him to take his fight somewhere unless he has a death wish. He then turns his back at Zaha to walk away from him, while Zaha reaches to something underneath his shirt. Pulling out a knife out of his shirt, he yells at Michio, saying that anyone who dares to fight back against him gets 100 penalties as he rushes at him with his knife to stab him. Michio, due to his past life survival instincts, easily notices the incoming attack, but he's suddenly interfered by a kid who pushes him away from the knife's trajectory, while calling out to him, telling him to look out for the knife. As the kid rushed to his rescue, pushing him aside, Michio skillfully balances himself back and rushes to Zaha, pushing aside the knife he was about to thrust. Gritting his teeth in rage, Michio asks him if he's ready to fight to the death since he drew a blade against him. Thrusting his hand forward, he hits him right in his voice box, temporarily making him unable to breathe properly and choke. He then throws him off balance and right into the ground. The kid who came to Michio's rescue stands there both shocked as well as surprised by Michio's martial prowess. Michio then sits on Zaha while grabbing him by his neck, pulling his hand back, ready to punch him right in his face. With a terrified look on his face, Zaha soon realizes his defeat. He then pleads to him to wait while he stutters as he asks of that. Gritting his teeth with rage burning in his eyes, Michio tells him that there's no wait in a fight to the death, and so his punch hits Zaha right on his face. With bloodied hands, Michio looks at the battered face of Zaha that he broke with his punches. He then disappointedly looks at his fist while thinking to himself that he was only able to do this little damage even after using his full body weight. With smoke emitting from his bloodied fist, he decides that he first needs to do something about this frail body of his. The kid who helped Michio yells out at him, asking him as to what is going on. Looking at the kid, Michio asks him if they were close. Hearing that, the kid asks him if he's trying to mess with him by trying to ask such ridiculous questions. Being on guard against the kid, Michio tells him that he has lost his memories. Worried by such an answer, the kid introduces himself, calling himself as Kyo, and that he lives next door to his house. Turning his head back again, he apologizes to him, saying that he doesn't remember his name either. As he continues to walk ahead, Kyo follows behind him, and soon Zaha finally comes to his senses. With blood dripping down from his nose into his mouth, with his eyes bulging out in anger, Zaha says that it's finally time to push Michio into super penalty hell. As they walk through the slums, Kyo tries to imitate Michio's moves and asks him if he can teach him how to fight. Finally opening his mouth, Michio asks him to tell him about this island. Putting his hands behind his head, he grinningly says that he sure will. Kyo then tells him that this is the industrial waste island floating in Tokyo Bay. an island full of garbage and trash, with a serious look forming on his face. He thinks to himself if there ever existed such a place in Japan. While they continue forward, Kyo then tells him how the men are forced to work at the mining site, and women and children can only sell things or collect garbage, and with the security as terrible as it is, he finalizes by calling the island a cesspit. Looking around, he thinks to himself how this is worse than a slum in a conflict zone. Michio then suddenly notices Kyo drooling over a loaf of bread. The shopkeeper, on seeing the kid drooling, tells him to get lost, as he wouldn't probably have any money to buy it. As Kyo starts to argue with the shopkeeper as to how he can just assume things, Michio's hand comes from behind with money in his hands. He then puts the money on the counter and tells the shopkeeper to give him that loaf of bread. Michio then hands over the bread loaf to Kyo, saying that it's a thank you token for the information he gave him. With a bright smile on his face, he expresses his gratitude towards him for the loaf of bread. Looking up at Michio, Kyo asks him as to where he got the money from. Michio simply replies by saying that it's war spoils from earlier. Thinking back to the time when he looted the money off of Zaha, he tells Kyo that he doesn't do things like looting from killed soldiers, but in unknown places, money is important to survive. Looking up at Michio, Kyo mentions it to him, saying how he's like a completely different person. Opening up the door to his house, Kyo cheerfully informs his family that he's home. Running to his mom with bread loaf in his hands, he tells her how they have a feast today and that Michio brought it for them. Wearing a warm smile on her bony and pale face, she thanks Michio and calls out to Kyo that they should eat together. Rubbing his stomach, Kyo informs his mother that he has already eaten. Patting his head, his mother asks him if he truly has. Replying to her, he tells her not to worry about it and eat, saying that she needs to get proper nutrition. Seeing the happy moment, Michio suddenly notices something and pushes back against the door to their house. Shaking all over, he does his best to push the door to open it, but isn't able to do so because of the heavy force being applied on it from the other side. Suddenly, fire bursts into the house from all sides. Standing in front of the house are the culprits, and the one commanding them is Zaha. While licking his knife, he says that the penalty for opposing him will be paid with death. While pushing back against the door, he realizes that people are blocking them from the outside, and that it's an attack with around at least 8 or 9 people outside. He turns his gaze to look around for anything useful in the house that he could use as a weapon. He finally notices a pouch and hurries to grab it. Getting hold of the pouch, he grabs and runs towards the door with it. Surprised by his movements, Kyo asks him as to what exactly he is trying to do. With the force generated from the run, he kicks the door open, sending the ones who were holding off the door away flying as the door swings open from his kick. He then notices a couple of workers along with Zaha standing against him, with each holding a knife. With a grin, he commands the workers to surround him from all directions and cut off any escape route that he could have. Heeding to his command, the workers surround him from all sides. With a death glare, he looks at Zaha, asking him about his objective for burning down someone's house. With an enraged, loud voice, Zaha tells him that it's the crime of making him angry, the crime of defying him, and the crime of hurting him, and for that, he gets the maximum penalty, that is, a death sentence. Glaring at him, Michio says that starting from then on, he'll now annihilate the enemy forces without any mercy. Both Kyo and his mother walk towards their house's entrance, shoulder to shoulder, as Michio stands right in front of the door. Pointing with his finger, Michio tells them to run when they see an opening. A worker then lunges at Michio with his knife, ready to stab him, while yelling out, saying that he won't let them escape. As the worker appears right in front of Michio, ready to plunge his knife into him, seeing that Michio gets into position to dodge it. As he dodges the knife, he suddenly hits the man on his head with the pouch he took hold of from Kyo's house. With a bump on his head, the worker falls on the ground, seeing that Zaha shouts at him to explain himself as to what the hell he did to him. Holding the pouch in his hand with rocks inside them, he explains how this technique called blackjack is an improvised weapon that can be made with cloth and small stones. He then explains how this improvised weapon uses the centrifugal force to strike the target, delivering a tremendous impact upon hit. Swinging the pouch in his hand, he runs towards the workers with full speed as he explains how this weapon is easy to construct and that with its vicious power it is even favored by first-class assassins. While striking through the workers, he explains how this is a lethal weapon specialized for human body destruction. He then finally stands in front of Zaha and says that it's just him that's left for him to deal with. Lunging towards him with his knife as an act of desperation, he shouts at Michio, telling him not to keep messing with him. As Zaha dashes towards him, Michio suddenly attacks his hand with his pouch. Holding his battered arm, he falls to his knees as Michio walks towards him. Seeing him standing in front of him, Zaha begs to calm down, saying that there'll be no penalty against him anymore. Ready to swing down the pouch at his face, Michio says that any dangerous element that threatens his life must be eradicated immediately. Suddenly, Kyo runs and grabs Michio by his waist, telling him to stop, and further tells him that he absolutely must not kill, and no matter how strong he becomes, killing people isn't something he should do, and that he doesn't want him to become a murderer. Seeing the chance, Zaha gets up and runs away from him as tears and drools falling off as he runs away. Seeing him running away, Michio throws the pouch at him while gritting his teeth as Kyo doesn't let go of him. The pouch hits a tree, breaking it off, while Zaha looks back at his attack worriedly as he runs away. Michio looks at Kyo, who stands there with his hands on his knees as he thanks God that he stopped and didn't kill him. Kneeling in front of a man sitting on a couch, Zaha begs him to punish Michio as he mentions how he hit him and swung his weapons around, saying that he is getting out of control. Standing in front of Zaha, he tells him that it's unforgivable. Without further warning, the man suddenly punches Zaha in the face. Putting on his golden knuckles, the man tells him that a site supervisor who loses to a slave miner is unforgivable as Zaha kneels there in front of him, holding his broken nose. Letting out his tongue, he decides to give him a customer service course as he pulls back his hand to punch him again, while Zaha just sits there with tears flowing out of his eyes as he holds his broken nose. Holding his blood-soaked hand against his own face, he talks to himself, saying that this Michio fellow might be worth beating up. Kyo and his mother have now moved into Michio's house. As his mother takes up the bed to rest, Michio and Kyo sit on the ground as Kyo mentions as to how this is absolutely the worst-case scenario. Kyo stands by the window as he looks at his burnt house, while he mentions how hard they worked to build it only for it to get destroyed like this. Kyo's mother then calls out to Michio, asking him if it's really okay for them to live here. Tying the string of his bow, he says that it is strictly a transaction and that he needs them to provide him with all the information regarding the island's management system and food supply networks and other important matters. Annoyed by his way of talking, Kyo tells him to stop talking so coldly. Looking at Michio, he tells him that he's been weird since he lost his memory. Hearing that, Michio just silently sits there while thinking to himself that the kid is right, saying that he's being like a totally different person than the Michio they used to know. He then remembers back to the time he was betrayed by his allies and killed, saying that it might have been something orchestrated by Captain Beck himself. With a pissed-off look on his face, he thinks to himself, saying that he definitely isn't going to let that slide and he'll definitely get off this island and annihilate the traitors. In the morning, he decides to exercise and starts by doing a handstand. After doing just 2 handstand push-ups, his body starts to shake as he reaches his limit. He then thinks to himself that he needs to rebuild his muscle strength and core from zero. He then notices Masa running towards him while calling for him. Getting back on his legs, he thinks to himself that this guy is from the time when he first met Zaha. Masa then tells Michio to hurry up or he'll be late for the mining site. Hearing that, Michio realizes that it would be a good opportunity for him to gather as much information as possible. In the mining site, Michio lines up along with the other miners. Michio then suddenly notices the workers standing beside him and thinks to himself that these are Zaha's cronies that he beat up. A man standing in front of them shouts at them, saying that there's an emergency announcement today. Gritting his teeth, this man says that Zaha, who was in charge of supervising G Squad, has died. He then points his finger towards Masa, calling him G8. He then tells him that he'll be replacing Zaha, hearing that Masa stands there surprised at his announcement. As the miners continue to mine, the story goes that the slave miners are forced into manual labor in the tunnels from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. It continues saying how the working environment is terrible and harsh, but it's pitch-black labor befitting the name of the slaves. A worker then suddenly hits another worker in the gut, calling him deadweight because he was working too slow. Putting his hand over the hurt worker's shoulder, he tells him how the other squads are the same as always, but he's the supervisor here, and he assures him that he won't hit anyone and tells him to continue digging at his own pace. With admiration in his teary eyes, he calls as Supervisor Masa. Walking over to another worker, Masa tells him to rest a bit as he looks a bit too tired. Suddenly, the worker who kicked the other worker in the gut comes to Masa, loudly asking him as to what kind of method he is trying to imply by being kind to mere slaves. He then suddenly pushes away Masa, saying that a supervisor shouldn't be doing something so weak. Clenching his fist, he at the workers with a smirk on his face, he tells them how spoiled guys piss him off and asks them if he should discipline them instead. Suddenly, a pickaxe hits his leg. As it hits his leg, he lets out a grunt in pain and asks as to who the hell did that. Wearing an unapologetic face, Michio approaches from behind and says that his hand slipped and apologizes. Closing the distance between them, the man says that such a half-assed apology won't be enough for accidentally hurting him, and that he looks like he's the one who needs to be disciplined. Suddenly, the person who beat Zaha to pulp approaches them, saying that if it's a fight, then they should let him join in too. Seeing that man, some workers whisper among themselves how the troublemakers are finished, as it's Kusanagi himself interfering. Getting scared in his presence, the troublemaker man says that he absolutely wouldn't dare fight with him. With a sudden leap, Kusanagi appears right in front of the troublemaker man, ready to punch him while he tells him to drop dead if he's not going to be fighting. Kusanagi's punch hits the man on the lateral side of his frontal skull bone, knocking him out. Looking at the punch, Michio thinks to himself that it's not just raw power, and that he struck the vital points of the human body precisely. Looking at Michio, Kusanagi asks him if he'll be fighting him currently. With a blank expression on his face, Michio tells him that he doesn't believe in meaningless fights. Hearing that, Masa approaches Michio from behind, calling out to him and tells him to use respectful language. Kusanagi stands intrigued as he hears the name Michio, asking if it's really Michio. Rushing towards him with a huge grin on his face, he mentions how he's been wanting to meet him. Seeing him dash towards him, Michio gets his guard up and gets into a fighting stance. He then throws multiple punches at once at him, which he easily blocks. Looking at Kusanagi continuous attacks, the workers worry amongst themselves as how Michio might not survive against such a barrier of attacks. As he continues to block against his punches, Michio thinks to himself how his speed, weight, and accuracy all are first class. He continues, saying that even though his physical traits are all first class but wide swings always create openings. Using that opportunity, Michio dodges that punch by leaping sideways. Using his bodily force, he punched Kusanagi in his face. The workers stand there with shock and terror are visible in their faces as they say how he landed a hit on Kusanagi. Looking up, Michio realizes that his punch never hit Kusanagi and was blocked by him as Kusanagi looks at this with a huge grin on his face. Excited by Michio's skills, Kusanagi tells him that they should fight until one of them is crushed. Suddenly, a person arrives from somewhere and shouts at them to be silent. The workers all fall to their knees while bowing down their heads to him. This person is Director Akechi. He walks through the bowed crowds towards Kusanagi and Michio. With a glint of furiousness in his eyes, he calls out to Kusanagi. Responding to him, Kusanagi turns to face him. Akechi then suddenly asks him if he intends to break the slaves with meaningless fights. With a stern look on his face, Akechi looks at him and asks him if he wants to be reported to the Blood Oath family. Laughing nervously, he walks towards Akechi, saying that it's just educational guidance and that he has no intention of breaking them. Akechi simply walks past him, asking him if he calls it guidance when all he can do is brawl. With a mocking expression on his face, he continues and tells him to not make him laugh and that he doesn't expect brainwork from an idiot. He then walks up to the workers, asking them if their job is crawling around. With a disgusted expression on his face, he looks at them and tells them to keep digging without wasting a single second if they don't want to be disposed of. Currently, it's 2 p.m., time for lunch break. Eating a bit of food from his lunchbox, Michio remarks how it is cold and tasteless. The workers then start complaining how this much food is not enough for lunch, and that the supervisors receive pretty good food quality, getting to eat their fill. Suddenly, Masa approaches Michio and hands over his lunchbox to him, telling him to eat it. Michio first stares at it blankly, then outright denies him, saying that he doesn't want it. Shocked by the denial, Masa asks him as to why he does not want it. Eating from his lunchbox, Michio says that he doesn't intend to owe favors. Sitting beside Michio, Masa lets out a sigh, saying that it's not a favor and that it's trouble fees from that time when they had trouble with Zaha and he blamed him just because he was a coward. Showing genuine care and worry, he tells how it doesn't sit right with him and that it's at least the most he can do to apologize and asks him to eat his lunchbox. Taking a piece of fried chicken from it, Michio says that for one false statement, one piece of fried chicken is appropriate. As Michio chews on the fried chicken, he tells Masa that they're even and that he should eat his lunch now. Suddenly, 2 workers approach him from behind, saying that if he doesn't want it, he should just give it to them. Masa then tiredly says that as it can't be helped, he'll give each a piece of fried chicken, and that's it. Heading that, the 2 workers ask him if that is really okay to do. Suddenly, a person who put Masa as the supervisor comes and asks them as to how long do slaves plan to keep eating, and then he orders them to stand up quickly and get back to their position and start mining. As they continue to work, the story goes as to how slave miners are forced into nothing harsh physical labor and that they have no human rights. Suddenly, an old man passing by Masa falls to the ground with bubbles coming out of his mouth. Seeing the elderly fall suddenly like that, Masa kneels to tend to him and asks him if he's okay and tells him to hang in there, while a person walks over to them seeing such an incident happen and tells Masa to move away. This person then kicks the old man who fainted, making his turn to lie on his back. He then crouches to check the pulse of the old and announces him dead. He then shouts at the other workers saying that this is their trash and tells them to go and dump it above ground. Masa trembles in sorrow as he tells Michio to not push himself too hard. The story then goes on as it depicts that in here, human life is lighter than garbage, and that over something as trivial as death, the mining doesn't stop. A person then rings a bell informing them that the work is finished for today. Trembling in exhaustion, Masa tries to stand through with the help of his shovel as he lets out a sigh of relief saying that it's finally finished. With a surprised expression on his face, he looks at Michio, asking as to why he still looks so energetic. Taking off his helmet, Michio replies by saying that he's used to this level of workload. Shocked at how nonchalantly Michio just said that, Masa thinks to himself if Michio was always this tough. The person once again rings the bell calling to Masa's squad to not dawdle. Hearing that warning, Masa apologizes to him. After mining is done, they are forcibly made to remove their clothes and made to walk naked. They then undergo thorough body searches to check if they've stolen ore. Only after all this is done do they finally return to the surface where a person calls out to them and hands them the wages for their work. Taking his daily wage of 1,000 yen, Michio thinks to himself how unfair it is to only get paid this little even after working for 16 hours a day. Michio then notices another miner acting happy after receiving such a small amount as a wage, as the person says how much this makes him happy. Suddenly, a food cart comes rolling with two women first congratulating them for their hard work mining today, and announces to them saying that it's time for a smiley sale. With a forced smile on her face, the shop lady mentions that today is Mining Appreciation Day with 20% off on everything. Michio stands there surprised as the miners alongside him start running towards the cart excitedly. The first person to get there asks for a packet of potato chips and a can of beer. After he gets his orders, the other lady tells him to take some dried squid too, as those might not be enough for him. Suddenly, the crowd gathers in front of the cart giving out their orders. Suddenly hearing all that the woman in the cart asks them to calm down and says that there's enough for everyone. Drinking the beer he bought off his wage, the man lets out a content sigh saying how it soaks into his very soul. The other person says that being stingy on Appreciation Day is the height of inefficiency, and that he's going all out with a luxurious 1,000 yen splurge. Michio stands there looking at them thinking how just moments ago they were treating them like slaves and now they're treating them with such respect and courtesy. Masa stands beside Michio, drooling at the sight in front of him, saying how everyone's so lucky. Looking at him, Michio asks him as to why he isn't buying anything. Wiping off his drool, Masa says that he has decided to endure until he gets the Paradise Pass. Surprised on hearing that word for the first time, Michio asks him as to what a Paradise Pass is. Hearing him say that, Masa surprisedly asks if he doesn't remember about how they told them about it when they came to this island. Going into a flashback, Mesa remembers his first day on the island while a person standing in front of them explains to them that from today itself they are slaves crawling at the bottom of the earth. Looking at the slaves, the man then says that they will be worked beyond their limits and given only scraps of food, their lives will be worse than livestock. Holding up a golden paper, the Paradise Pass in his hand, he mentions how even hell's judgment depends on money, and that if they want to grab the spider's thread, they will have to save 1 million yen and buy this Paradise Pass, and with that, they will be given freedom off the island. The people start to get excited on seeing that there is at least some hope for them to escape this place, and that they'll definitely start saving up to buy the Paradise Pass. With a determined look on his face, Masa mentions saying that's when he decided that no matter how much he is kicked around and no matter if he collapses from overwork, he won't spend money no matter what. Michio then makes out a theory of his own, saying how there is no rebellion despite the terrible conditions and that it's thanks to two carrots, the first being the carrot called hope, in the form of the Paradise Pass. He then mentions the other carrot being called pleasure, in the form of Appreciation Day, and how people forget hope while drowning in pleasure. With a seriously disgusted look on his face, he realizes that the mining site employees and those backing them understand this and are doing their best to exploit it. Holding his wage, he walks towards Masa, asking him as to how much does he have left for the Paradise Pass. Surprised by that question, he asks him why he wants to know about that. Looking right into his eye, Michio assures him to not worry and that he won't leak confidential information. Handing him his wage, Michio tells him that he just wants to support his escape. Walking by the cliff, Michio repeats how there's only just 60,000 yen left to go. Holding his chin, Michio says that adding his salary makes it 2,000 yen per day, and that they'll be able to achieve it in 30 days. Worried and confused, Masa asks him, saying that though he's grateful for the help, he still doesn't understand why Michio would go so far as to help him out like this. Standing by the edge of the cliff, Michio looks down at the sea as he speaks, saying that it's all for his own sake. Looking at the waterbed covered in rocks, Michio asks Masa if there is any beach or dock on this island. Pointing straight, Masa says that there really is no such a place on this island. Crouching down by the cliff, Masa tells him of how this island is surrounded by steep cliffs on all sides. Michio then decides to climb down the cliff, saying that he should check below as well. As he starts to climb down, Masa calls out to him, saying that it's dangerous to do something like that, and that escape is illegal. Hearing that, Michio questions by asking him if there is really law in this lawless zone. Michio suddenly notices a drone equipped with a gun, and he realizes that it's a military drone. Seeing the drone, Michio suddenly climbs back up. He then looks at Masa and tells him to start running. Unable to understand what is happening, Masa asks him as to what he is trying to say. Suddenly, a bullet grazes Masa by his cheek as it goes past him. Masa hurriedly starts running away in panic as Michio follows him from behind. As they continue to run away, the drone showers them with a barrage of bullets, which luckily doesn't hit them. Looking back at the drone in the sky, Michio realizes that this drone is SG, Nemesis 1.0. This drone targets anything that's moving within its search range, and it relentlessly pursues targets it identifies to the end of the earth. While continuing to run away from it, Michio then mentions that it is nicknamed the Mad Pursuer, a killing weapon that has made many soldiers tremble in fear. While running, Michio suddenly takes the lead and turns to his side and tells him to follow him. Seeing him turn, Masa mentions that there's no path the way Michio is taking. Hurriedly, Michio just tells him to charge through the bushes and all. The drone continues to follow behind them, adapting to the change in surroundings. As Michio breaks through the branch as he rushes through, he thinks to himself, realizing that this drone is specialized for tracking performance. After seeing the speed at which the drone is chasing them, Michio realizes that at the speed they're going in, they will soon be shot to death. He then notices a wild mouse on a tree trunk and decides to take it and use it as a distraction. While running, he looks back at Masa and tells him to stop and not move at all when his counting reaches 0. Hearing that, Masa worriedly tells Michio to not be stupid, else they might simply turn into Swiss cheese made by the drone itself. Without speaking anything further, Michio starts counting down. They continue to run across the forest, luckily dodging every bullet. Looking at the mouse in his hand, Michio asks it to forgive him as it continues to squeak in his hand. With his countdown reaching 0, he throws the mouse at the drone. The mouse perfectly hits the motion-sensing camera on the drone, making it search for moving targets once again. And it soon finds the only moving target, it being the wild mouse running on a branch, and then he barrages it with bullets, shooting through it in one go. The drone then turns to Michio and Masa, as they just stood there like a statue, not having a single movement. Michio and Masa have frozen themselves in their tracks, suddenly coming to a halt in running position. The drone flies around them in circles, trying to notice any slight movement from them. Having found no movement, it flies away from them, announcing that execution is complete. Masa then suddenly falls on his back, bawling his eyes out, thanking God for letting him live for one more day. With tears still flowing out of his eyes, he looks at Michio and asks him as to what the hell was that thing that was following them. Grabbing his hand, Michio explains, saying that it was an indiscriminate killing drone developed by the Aldemir Republic, specialized in tracking ability. And because it's indiscriminate, it can't distinguish between enemy and ally, making it a defective product that long ago disappeared from battlefields. Still grabbing onto his hand, Masa surprisedly asks if that thing was really used in battles, and that Michio sure seems to know a lot about it. Pulling him up by his hand, Michio looks up at the sky, thinking to himself as to why the crazy chaser, the Mad Pursuer, is in a place like this, and how its sales and lending it to other countries should have been prohibited due to the danger it possesses. He then thinks if this island has any connection to the Aldemir military. He then returns back to his house, where Kyo seems to be cooking something, and on noticing Michio enter, he greets him. With a growl coming from his stomach, he mentions how he is late. Hearing that, Kyo's mother weakly tells him that he should first say welcome home to him. Looking at him cooking, Michio asks him as to what he is cooking. Kyo simply answers him by asking if he already forgot about his specialty leftover stew and how much he used to love it. Serving a bowl full of his stew, Kyo mentions how it's all thanks to him that he was able to buy such high-quality leftover stew. Looking at the stew, Michio thinks to himself that it doesn't look like anything of high quality leftover to him. Sitting together around a table, Kyo prays before he could dig into his food. Kyo cheerfully shouts out saying how it smells really good to him. Chewing on his food, Michio thinks to himself how it's terribly sour, and if this is something humans should eat, and that military rations would be way better than this. Having the first bite of the stew, Kyo happily cheers up saying how it tastes so delicious. Surprised by Kyo's behavior, Michio whispers to his mother asking as to what type of taste buds he has to think that it's delicious. His mother then whispers back saying how on this island even leftovers aren't easy to buy, and since he was little, he's been eating even much worse things. Excitedly, Kyo shows off the little piece of meat that he found in his stew, calling it a big hit. He then happily eats it saying how irresistible it is. He then pulls out his hand and asks Michio to give him his salary, the real money he earned today. Ignoring him, he simply drinks his stew and tells him that he gave it to Masa. While he finishes his stew, he says that he also plans to keep giving him his money. Hearing that, Kyo suddenly stands up shouting out a big "what" in shock. Pointing at his spilled stew, Kyo says that it's his fault that he spilled his stew. Kneeling over near the stew, with tears welling up in his eyes, Kyo mentions how there was still some left in it. Putting down his bowl, he stands up and tells Kyo that he has a good use for it, and further tells him to pick up the leftovers and follow him. They are now in the first with a straw basket in front of them. As Michio holds the leftover stew in the bowl, Kyo asks him as to what he is trying to do with the leftover stew and the straw basket right in the middle of the forest. Michio then empties the stew in the bowl onto the ground. Seeing that, Kyo exclaims in shock. Worriedly, Kyo accuses him of throwing away his cooking. Sticking up a stick near the stew, he tells him that he didn't throw it away. Putting the straw basket with the support of the stick, Michio says that what he's trying to do is called recycling. Finally done setting up the trap, Michio tells him as to how even smelly leftovers are a decent feast for beasts, and that in other words, is enough to lure prey. Pointing at it, Kyo asks him about what he can catch with this trap. Michio replies by saying that it's probably possible to catch small animals like mice and so on. With a disgusted look on his face, Kyo asks him if it is even safe to eat mice, and mentions how people have gotten sick and died from them. Turning back and walking away from the trap, he tells Kyo how it's mostly sewer rats in the city that are the hotbeds of pathogens, but forest mice are a valuable protein source. Looking back at Kyo, he tells him that if he doesn't like the idea of eating mice, then they should walk a bit further. Walking through the branches, Kyo asks him if he's going to be setting more traps. Walking forward, Kyo confusedly tells him that he surely doesn't need to set them in such thick bushes. Replying to Kyo, Michio says that thick bushes is exactly why it's good. Their eyes fall upon a bird trapped in a simple mechanism that Michio set up using just a caterpillar. Michio looks back to Kyo and asks if this much is enough for today's meal money. With glowing eyes, he replies by saying that it is. In the mining site management building, there are people standing in front of Akechi reading out reports on this week's mining output and deaths. The person who appointed Masa as the supervisor informs him, saying that this week's mining output is 643.72 tons, and that a total of 9 slaves have died. Reading the report, he then says how that's a lot of deaths, and that most of the deaths are thought to be from malnutrition or overwork. This person is Deputy Director Ueshima. He then says how slave life is still a life and asks him if they should increase meals and extend break times. Throwing away the reports he was given to take a look at, he tells them that the company's evaluation criteria doesn't include the word human life. Before Ueshima could say anything further, he stops him saying that he should not make him repeat the same thing twice. With a serious look on his face that if he were to just increase the mining output, then his evaluation increases and promotion to headquarters comes faster as well. Wearing a scary expression on his face, he says how much he doesn't want to stay on this garbage island and orders Ueshima to prioritize mining over the number of slaves they use up. Not knowing what to say further, Ueshima simply bows head slightly saying that he understands his task. Another deputy director reports to him, saying that the total wages are 2.8 million yen and that merchandise sales are 2.523 million yen with a recovery rate of 90%. With a devilish grin on their faces, they mention how those miners were drinking and eating idiots right after getting their wages. Touching his specs, he mentions how these workers have beast-level intelligence for biting at the carrot in front of them and getting caught in the trap. He then looks back at the deputy directors and asks them if they have any other report to make. One of the deputy directors comes forward and mentions he heard that G8 Masa has been aiming for a paradise pass. Hearing that report, all the other deputy directors burst into laughter, saying how a slave miner is dreaming of saving 1 million yen. and that there's no way he would be able to save that much. Hearing that report, Akechi starts to eerily grin. It is in the morning, and Masa is standing in front of Michio's house and knocks on the door, asking if he's awake. Masa suddenly hears his voice from beside his house. Masa looks surprised at what he sees when he peeks beside his house. To his surprise, Masa finds Michio holding his whole body's weight with just one hand while using a cloth. Looking at the approaching Masa, he asks him what he wants. With confusion visible on his face, he says that he thought that maybe they could go to work together. He then suddenly asks him again as to what he is doing. Landing on the ground, Michio says that as he can see this current body of his too weak, with determination overflowing in his eyes, he says that in order to achieve his objective, he needs much more physical strength. Looking at him with a warm smile, Masa mentions how he is so strange. The door to Michio's house suddenly opens up, rubbing his eyes, half asleep. Kyo comes out asking who it is that is being so noisy in the morning. Looking at Masa standing there, he asks him of his identity. Pointing at himself, he introduces himself saying that he's Masa and he's Michio's co-worker. Kyo suddenly presents his hand to him, telling him to give back the money he took from Masa, saying that it's their food money. Holding his stomach with a sorrowful expression on his face, he tells him how they're always starving here. Looking at Kyo's hands, Masa thinks of that one time his sister mentioned how she was feeling really hungry while walking alongside Masa back home. He then remembers the look of happiness and fulfillment on his sister's face when she said how much she loves his bread crust rusk. With a warm expression on his face, Masa thinks to himself that he wants to feed Yui more if his bread crust rusks again. He then gets down on one knee and faces Kyo directly as he gently apologizes for taking Michio's money and tells him that he'll bring something delicious the next time he comes over and asks him to forgive him. Turning his face away, Kyo specifically tells him to bring something worth 1,000 yen, and soon Michio walks towards them, ready to leave for work. In the underground mining site tunnels, they are all currently working while the guy called Haida walks wobbly as he carries a bunch of ores in a basket. Having noticed that, Masa calls out to a guy called Ishizuka to provide cover for Haida and tells him that 2 people working together is better. Heeding his command, Ishizuka rushes to Haida's aid and offers to carry one side in the basket that Haida alone was carrying. Suddenly, Akechi, along with the deputy directors, enter complimenting Masa on his excellent leadership skills, saying how he's also properly considering safety and how that makes him outstanding for his leadership skills. Taking off his helmet and standing straight, he greets Director Akechi and asks him as to why he knows about him. Replying to his question, he says that it's because he's famous. Walking towards Masa, he says how the rumors about him seem to be true, that a site supervisor who unites his squad without relying on violence and can increase production. Hearing such praise from the director himself, Masa bows down his head in happiness, thanking him for such praise. Akechi then looks at him and smiles and says that there's no need for him to be so tense, and that the reason he came here today is because he wanted to give a special reward to a promising person like him. Looking at him, he says that having incentives might surely boost one's motivation, while Deputy Director Ueshima looks away in guilt. Talking to him, Akechi says that it's dangerous to hand it over in a public place like this, as he'd never know when he might be targeted here. He then signals him with his hand, telling him to follow him to a safe place to receive his reward. Mesa then rushes over to Michio, whispering to him, asking if he heard what just happened and that it might help save up for the Paradise Pass all at once. With a slight bit of worry showing on his face, he looks at Masa and tells him to at least not let his guard down because of the reward. Cheerfully, Masa tells him that he's just overthinking it and that he should just accept people's goodwill honestly. Waving at Michio, Masa runs after them in excitement while shouting out to Michio, telling to wait for him with anticipation. While walking out of the mine, the guy who killed Zaha smirks and asks him if his name is Michio. Turning his head back with a mischievous grin on his face, he asks him if he's worried about his friend and that they are going to be having a party at his place currently. Hearing that, Michio realizes that his suspicions might come true and looks at him with a pissed-off look on his face. Now they've all appeared in front of Masa's house. He then says that it might be a dirty little room unfit for the gentlemen they are. With a normal grin forming on his face, Akechi mentions that a private room is more convenient to discuss. Opening the door to his house, he walks first and welcomes them in. Presenting his house, he asks them to excuse him and that he'll go and make some tea for them. Holding his nose with a disgusted look on his face, Akechi says how this room is dirtier than he imagined it to be and how it's making his nose rot. He then commands the deputy directors behind him to go ahead and search his house. Hearing that, they walk forward, deciding to search every nook and cranny. Mesa then looks around at them, asking as to what they are trying to do while Kusanagi walks towards him. He then suddenly hits Masa right in the gut. He then falls on the floor and suddenly, a deputy director comes and sits on his back as he holds his hands up behind him. Looking at Masa like he's not even worth more than a bug, Akechi asks him where he is hiding the money with which he plans on buying a paradise pass. Holding him by his hair, he pulls his head up, telling him to speak up and he'll only be losing his money that way. With drool and spit flowing down his mouth, he asks if that story about the special reward was a lie they used to deceive him. Akechi then asks him if he realizes that just now and mentions how slaves have rock-bottom intelligence. With tears flowing out of his eyes and spit and drool flowing out of his mouth, he realizes that he was tricked and tells them that he doesn't have any money and that he's just a normal slave. He then throws his head away, saying that he's just wasting his time by playing dumb. He then calls out to one of his deputy directors and he comes forward holding a plier in his hand. The deputy director then crouches in front of Masa, holding his front tooth with the plier. With a merciless expression on his face, Akechi tells him to go for it. And so, in a single try, he forcibly pulls out one tooth of Mesa from his mouth. As he does so, Masa cries out in excruciating pain as blood starts gushing out from the place his tooth was in. Looking at him with a serious expression on his face, he reminds him as to how he just told him that he'll only be losing money if he starts talking honestly. With a terrifying expression on his face, Akechi then gives him a choice, asking him whether he will honestly give them the location of where the money is or would he be willing to lose something else. Night has already fallen over them, and Mesa's team has finally come out of the mining site, while the others talk amongst themselves, saying how late Supervisor Masa is taking to return, and that the director might have taken a liking to him, so he's probably having a delicious meal as of now. Michio then notices Deputy Director Ueshima and thinks to himself that this man was definitely with Akechi as they took Masa with them. Michio then suddenly approaches Ueshima and asks where Masa, G8, has gone. Seeing him approaching him so suddenly, Ueshima stumbles upon his own words and says that he doesn't know where he is. Looking at Ueshima, Michio asks him directly as to what they are all scheming. While sweating profusely, he looks away. He then tells Michio that it's better if he doesn't pry too much as he too might have a place to return to. The torture on Masa even now, with him being left with only a couple of teeth in his mouth. Looking at Mesa, he once again tells him that it would be rational of him to tell them the location of his money, else he won't even be able to eat at all if this torture were to continue any longer than it has. While he lies there writhing in pain and hopelessness, he still denies them of not knowing the location to where the money is. He slyly laughs at him. How pitiful he is to even lack the intelligence to make this level of judgment. They then forcibly put back in one of his teeth from where they took it out of. Akechi maintains his laugh through Masa's continued screams, asking him if it is good that he has now gotten one of his teeth back. He then commands the deputy director doing that torture to repeat the process of tooth extraction and implantation. With a clap of his hands, the deputy director extracts his tooth, and with another clap he implants it back into its place. And so they continue on with the process of extraction and implantation, ignoring his cries of pleas and screams of pain. And it keeps continuing further and further without any mercy on Masa. Finally, not being able to endure the pain, he screams at them, telling them to stop. With a pissed-off look on his face, Kusanagi stands beside Akechi as he asks him if he's ready to cough up the location of the money. Mesa lies there, wheezing, out of breath from the countless times he was tortured upon. With tears flowing out of his eyes, he still decides that he won't let them know the location of the money, as he has a reason to get off this island. He then remembers the moment when his sister apologized to him for how expensive the surgery might have been for him to afford, and how he showed her a confident smile, saying that he found himself a job. He then remembers his promise to her, as how he would earn plenty of money and buy lots of souvenirs for her. While on death's door, he thinks to himself that if he were to hand over the money, then he might not be able to live at all, and his sister will be left all alone to fend for herself. Looking at him annoyedly, Akechi asks him how long he plans on being stubborn and if he wants to lose all his teeth like this and not from old age. With his weepy face and stuttering voice, he continues on how he doesn't have any money with him. Suddenly, Kusanagi walks forward and hits the back of the head of the deputy director, torturing Masa. With worry showing on his face, Akechi asks him what he thinks he's doing. Turning to Akechi, he asks him if he really doesn't get it, even after seeing this for so long, that this guy won't crack with such methods. He then pulls Masa close to his face by holding his collar and tells him that he has changed his opinion of him after seeing all this. With a serious and strong punch to his chest, he cracks some of his ribs with his fist. As he feels his ribs breaking, he lets out a really loud cry in agony, spitting out blood from his mouth. He then falls to the ground on his knees as Kusanagi commends how he won't even crack after all this and that he has proven himself to be a real man with all this. Wearing a really mischievous smile on his face, he tells him that this is what makes him worth beating up. Kusanagi prepares to punch Masa again with his overwhelming physical strength that crushes bones in one hit. Violence that genuinely enjoys hurting people. Masa looks up at him with teary eyes and bloodied mouth. It makes Masa think that pain and terror that is made of being tortured with tooth extraction seems much better than these bone-crushing punches. Letting his tongue out to excitement, he tells Masa that he better not die on him. With the punch about to hit him, he remembers how his sister, Yui, denied him saying that she doesn't want any souvenirs as long as her brother is with her. And so the punch hits him once again on his chest. Adjusting his glasses, Akechi asks him if it hurts and if it's painful for him and tells him that if he were to talk honestly, then he'll make them stop. And so another punch hits him on his chin. He then remembers his sister's heartwarming, beautiful smile as she tells him how much she loves him. With another punch hitting him, he gets thrown back. Seeing his stubbornness, Akechi shouts at him and tells him to spit it out as to where he has hidden the money. Standing his ground even after getting beaten so badly, he still tells them that he doesn't know where the money is. Akechi finally snaps after hearing him say that and orders Kusanagi to kill him. And soon Michio seems to be rushing towards Masa's place. He then finally arrives at his place only to find it beaten to a near-death situation, lying on the ground while wheezing. With lifeless eyes, he calls out to Michio. Michio then rushes to his side and holds him in his hand as Masa continues to wheeze. Looking at the battered Masa, he soon notices that his 6th to 10th ribs have been fractured, and the broken bones must have damaged his lungs, thus resulting in his abnormally rapid breathing. He then opens his mouth and sees that many teeth have fallen out, with nasal bone and orbital floor broken, plus multiple skull fractures with stab and cut wounds in the mouth. Checking his pulse, he realizes that his pulse is really weak with aortic damage and traumatic shock. Holding him close, he thinks to himself as to what sort of torture one has to go through to end up like this. Mesa looks at Michio and tells him his warning was right and that they were really after his money, but he still protected it to the end. Faintly smiling, he mentions how he can't use the money anymore and tells Michio that he's now giving it to him. Michio, on hearing that, straightforwardly tells him that he doesn't accept favors and tells him to wait for his body to recover and use it himself. Grabbing onto his hand, he begs him to accept it. With tears flowing down his face, he tells him that he knows he's about to die and at this rate, it'll be wasted money if Michio doesn't take it. He then tells him of the location where the money is. He says that if he were to walk straight from this house, there's a big tree with cuts on the coast, and that the money is buried at the base of that tree. He mentions how he saved that money desperately, but now he's giving it all to him, and tells Michio of his one last dying wish he hopes for Michio to fulfill. Looking at him, he tells him that when he gets off this island, he should go and find his sister. Masa then remembers the time when his sister gifted him a piece of cloth as his birthday present. Seeing that cloth, he asks her if she cut it off from her favorite skirt. With a bright smile on her face, she tells him that she simply wanted to give him a present for always working so hard. While touching the cloth from his sister, he smiles in pain. He mentions how she's a really good girl and tells Michio to find her for him. Once again, Michio straightforwardly denies him and says that he can't accept that promise. He then grabs his arm with whatever life is left in him and begs him to accept that promise. As he lies there on his arms, he tells him that when he gets off this island, he should look for a girl named Honju Yui. And when he meets her, he wants him to apologize in his stead while also thanking her for everything. And like that, he finally takes his last breath. His body grows cold and lifeless in Michio's arms. Michio closes his own eyes, doing a moment of silence for this soul as Masa's tears fall from his cheeks in droplets showing memories of his sister. He then holds his lifeless body in his hands as he comes out of the house walking to the location Masa spoke to him, while someone watches him from a distance. He then puts his body near the tree and dogs up the money that Masa wanted him to have. Having dug up the money, he looks at Masa's lifeless body and says that he has received what he was asked to take. He then reaches for the piece of cloth on his arm and takes it off him. He covers his face with the cloth, saying that he'll keep it for him. Suddenly, a voice approaches him from behind, asking if he's dead. Looking at Michio with a glare while a smirk forms on his face, Akechi tells him that Masa was a remarkably foolish man, suffering needlessly and losing both his life and money. And then he asks him if this is truly a fitting end for a bottom-tier trash. He then points at Michio, calling him a filthy slave and tells him to bring that filthy money to him. Standing up beside his corpse, Michio looks at them and tells him that he refuses to do such. Looking at him, he mentions how slaves are all really big idiots, and that he's also the same as that trash, Masa. He then points at him and tells the deputy directors to charge and take the money from him. Getting into his stance, Michio gets ready to mop the floor with them. He then dashes forward using his body force to punch one of the deputy directors heavily with his punch. He then rushes through all of them, defeating them all in a single strike. And with an uppercut, he knocks out the last deputy director, again in a single hit. Speaking of the money, he tells Akechi that those are the war funds entrusted to him by Masa, and if he were to take it, then he would eliminate them himself. Akechi then suddenly pulls out a gun from under his overcoat and points it at Michio. Holding his gun, Kusanagi forces it down and tells him to call it off as bullets are too precious to waste on a lowly, filthy slave like him. Cracking his knuckles, Kusanagi calls out to him and excitedly tells him that they can finally continue with their fight from that time. As he walks towards Michio, Akechi tells him to not take too much and finish it as quickly as possible. They both stand against each other and take their stances. Kusanagi then suddenly rushes at Michio while grinning. He throws multiple punches at Michio, which he dodges each time, while learning that his opponent is a boxer and one with considerable training. Ready to punch him, Kusanagi commends him for his great footwork, saying that he can't win just by dodging hits. As he's just about to punch, Michio dodges its trajectory and appears right below laterally to Kusanagi. With agile movement, he punches him right in the liver as Kusanagi grits his teeth upon impact. As his fist is still in Kusanagi's chest, he commends him for the good liver blow, as that attack doesn't damage him even in the slightest. Looking at Michio, he tells him that he's going to give him a nice long massage in return for that great liver blow. Standing like a mountain in front of him, Kusanagi takes his stance to punch Michio. Holding his hands up close, Michio decides to take the blow and block it. As Kusanagi's attack hits him, Michio gets pushed back in impact even though he blocked his attack. Grinning while looking at them fight, Akechi thinks to himself that no matter how cleverly a cat moves, it can't even beat a tiger. Holding his fists up close, Michio dashes towards Kusanagi. He then showers him with a barrage of punches to his face. Seeing Michio's punches, Akechi thinks to himself that his punches seem too light, and that level of strike can't even stop Kusanagi. Kusanagi once again punches him while Michio blocks it again with his hands. He then flies back from the impact of that punch, even though he blocked it perfectly. He finally stops by the cliff, inches away from falling down. Looking at him cornered, Kusanagi rushes at him, ready to punch him. He asks him if he really thought he could win just by guarding, and if he really thought so, then he's too naive for this world. As his punch is about to hit him, Michio dodges it swiftly and decides to counter with a punch. Hitting him from over his hand, his attacks finally deal some damage to Kusanagi. Spitting out the blood, he says that it's just how he thought of it to be, while announcing how it is so entertaining to him. Excited, he once again rushes at Michio, saying that this is how a fight should be like. As he gets to strike, Kusanagi analyzes Michio's stance and scoffs at him for going with the counter stance again. Suddenly, Kusanagi's punch stops right in front of his face. About to kick him, Kusanagi mentions how he's not just punches. Adjusting his glasses, Akechi thinks to himself how Michio is reading that Kusanagi has a boxing background and that he's correct for thinking so. It's not just punches that Kusanagi does, but kicks are also included, with the so-called kick just inches away from Michio's face. Michio skillfully blocks Kusanagi's kick with his hands. He then grabs Kusanagi by his waist and pushes him down to the ground. Seeing that scenario, Akechi also looks at that, surprised to see such a scenario unfolding in front of his eyes. Skillfully, Michio locks his throat with his elbow and thigh, trying to make it difficult for him to breathe. Getting choked, Kusanagi curses at him as he asks him if he really was reading his moves. Stancing himself to strike Kusanagi's face with his elbow, he says that it was because of his high center of gravity and stable footwork, with characteristics of using striking techniques. And Michio's elbow hits Kusanagi directly on his face, precisely his nose. And Michio suddenly pulls himself back to prepare for another elbow strike. Noticing an opening, Kusanagi suddenly grabs him by his throat, saying how he was so close to winning this fight. He then slams Michio into the ground with a really strong force. While sitting on him, tightly grabbing him by his throat, he tells him that he might have won if it were a martial arts competition. But it isn't, and what they're doing right now is a fight with no rules or whatsoever. Adjusting his glasses, Akechi thinks to himself as to how long it has been since he last saw Kusanagi being serious during a fight. He thinks back to the time when slave rebellions used to happen quite a lot, and that there were countless fighters confident in their skills, but none could beat Kusanagi. He then looks at Kusanagi from a distance, as he continues how Kusanagi is a brawler not bound by rules, and that there's no way he would lose to a mere fighter. With a burning spirit while widely grinning, as he continues to choke Michio, he tells him that he can't ever defeat him using polite martial arts. 56 kept on strangling 23. 56 said that he can never ever think of defeating anyone by using just polite martial arts. Hearing this remark, 23 once again locked in and gathered his strength. Using his right hand, 23 loosened his grip from 56, giving a jab right into his face, making him spit out blood. Continuing with the same force and flow, 56 regained his composure and grabbed his hand back onto 23's neck. 56 realized what 23 was planning. 23 was trying to use a palm strike to create a space to insert his leg. Using his leg as a leverage point, 23 wrapped around 56's arms using both of his legs, twisting it around and grabbing 56's head behind his knees, locking him into a chokehold position. Grabbing his entire body in that chokehold position, 23 slammed 56's entire body down in a chokeslam, ramming his head into the ground. 19's got absolutely surprised at seeing the scene unfold in front of him. Using 56's left hand as a base point, 23 put both of his legs on it, stretching 56's entire body and grabbing his right hand, locking him into another chokehold position. Grabbing his arm, 23 started saying, "That is this what 56 meant by a fight? Is this what he wanted?" 56 was just shocked at 23 uttering these words. The next movement, 23 started to pull and twist 56's arms in the opposite way, applying an enormous amount of stress on 56's shoulder joints. 56 looked up at 23, realizing what he was trying to do, starting to scream in pain. The tendons in 56's shoulders kept on stretching and stretching, causing enormous pain to him, making him scream. Finally, 23 put all of his weight on 56's arm, putting enormous amount of force on his elbow, breaking it in the opposite way. Having his elbow broken, 56 started to scream in pain. Leaving him down there in pain, 23 said that to not misunderstand that he was trying to fight this way. In 23's eyes, this kind of fight could not even be considered a fight in the first place, much less a match even. This is nothing but straight-up primordial fight to death. 56 was shocked and scared and looked at 23 with his bloodshot eyes at how direct he is now. The person standing in front of him right now, 23, whose actual name was George Sai, was Aldemir Army's Ghost Special Elite Forces' strongest man. Contrary to his unparalleled fighting technique, this guy actually never once had experienced a fight, a brawl. Shouting in excitement at how interested he was, he used his one good hand and pulled out two fingers, his index and middle, to poke 23's eyes. 23 could clearly see that 56's fingers were rapidly moving towards his eyes. Putting his head down, he changed the finger's target from 23's eyes up to 23's forehead in one instance. Having both of his fingers, his index and middle finger, broken, 56 started to scream in pain once more. What 23 was experiencing was not just a brawl fight. What 23 was facing was an intense exchange of life and death scenarios. He readied his right arm, pulling it back in order to punch right 56 on his face. Realizing the attack that was coming in his way, 56 barely used his broken arm in order to shield his face. The intensity of the elbow strike was so strong that 56 started to see a mirage of a hammer coming down on his face. But unlike what 56 has expected, 23, instead of hitting his face, turned his attack around and hit the ground. 56 was still breathing rapidly from the shock and confusion from what the heck just happened right now. He realized what kind of person 23 was. Normal people would hesitate at the moment of taking a life. But this guy was absolutely different. Because this guy 23 was about to kill him calmly, efficiently, and with 100% certainty. 23 charged his punch by pulling his hand back with next target, 56's face. Realizing that 23 was just trying to kill him, he used both of his broken hands in order to make a shield to protect his face. But reacting to this shield, 23 changed his punch to focus all of his power to just his index finger. Easily crossing through his hand shield, 23 used his index finger to hit the Adam's apple of 56. 56 instantly lost his hand shield formation and started to cough uncontrollably, spitting out blood as well. Taking a moment to gain his sanity back, 56 looked back at 23. 56 realized that 23 was not just a fighter or some random street brawler. Looking at the sheer skill of 23, 56 had no doubt about it. 23's punch came raining down, hitting 56 in his face, making him realize that 23 was a professional killer. 23's punch made 56 almost lose consciousness and broke both of his teeth, leaving him with a bloodied face. The combat technique which 23 used, aka George Sai used, was was known as Krav Maga. It was a special kind of martial artist used by special forces of various countries, and it was the world's strongest close-quarter combat system. While 56 was laying unconscious, 23 grabbed a large stone that was beside them. He picked up the stone, raised it high with super-fast inertia to hit 56's face. 56 just laid there, unable to realize what was coming his way. From holding the stone at such a height, 23 used all of his strength to swing it down at full speed towards 56's face. Just as the rock was about to hit 56's face, a voice shouted out to him to not do it, to stop there. He got reminded of a flashback where a little kid held 23 tightly around his waist, shouting at him that he absolutely must not kill, to absolutely not become a murderer. The child was continuously screaming with tears in his eyes. Hearing the little kid's cries and pleas, 23 stopped in his tracks, coming back out from the flashback. He stopped the stone midair, stopped himself from killing 56. Frustrated, he used all of his strength to throw the stone somewhere else. The rock fell from 23's hand far behind past the cliff into the water below. 23 just stood there while 56 was down that line unconscious. The next moment, he caught someone laughing towards him. It was 56. He had stood up on his legs menacingly, laughing about how awesome all of this was. 56 screamed with his mouth full of broken teeth that this is what he was looking for to fight until one of them was dead. 23 went into his formation instantly once more. But the next moment, 23 heard a gun cock from his behind. 19 shot a bullet towards 23 but instantly escaped, leaving the bullet to trail and hit 56. 23 could not control the inertia of his jump and fell over the cliff. 56 was absolutely surprised and confused at what had happened. 56 then looked down, trying to see the extent of the damage. The bullet had pierced his left chest near his heart, spewing blood everywhere. On the other side, 23 had not actually fallen down the cliff, but he had held himself hanging there by just one hand. Using just one hand to hang, 23 was swinging around, screaming in pain. 19 clicked his tongue, annoyed at how he was unable to shoot 23. But then he added that it also did not matter anyways, because at least he was able to punish the loser dog. 56, enraged with 19's reaction, started cussing out to him. With a creepy smile, 19 told 56 to not get so much work done, because a useless mutt who was unable to beat a slave deserves to be put down. Didn't he? Realizing he was about to die, he steered his bloodlust towards 19. Screaming about damning everything, 56 started to run like mad dog towards 19 while he was still holding out his gun. Grinning and laughing, he loudly shouted that dogs who have been put down should not move and that he should just lay down. But 56, running on pure adrenaline by this point, kept on taking 19's bullet one by one, but didn't stop running towards him. 19 kept on emptying his bullets on 56 one by one. 56 kept on getting closer and closer to 19 each and every second. 19 started to get nervous that why was 56 not going down and how was he able to take all of his bullets and still run towards him. Charging his broken arm for one last punch, he shouted, 19 to die, directing his punch towards him. 19's eye got narrower and narrower as he struggled to deal with 56's punch. But then he shit his last bullet, which went and hit 56 right on his temple, finally stopping him. 56 charged up, fist stopped midair right before 19's face. 56 started to fall down, trying to say something to him. Uttering just a single word, "Damn!" he started to fall down. He finally fell down in front of 19 while blood sputtering out from the back of his head from the bullet, which 19 just shot at him. With drops of sweat running down his temple, 19 started to laugh like a maniac. He started to kick 56's face, shouting and laughing that finally he was down, this mad, stubborn dog. Like a psychopath, 19 kept on kicking the head and body of 56, shouting damn repeatedly over and over again. 19 turned around to his goons who were already down, shouting that how long they needed to keep on resting, shouting them out again to get up quickly. He ordered his men to tell the Blood Oath family that 56 was shot by a slave who had stolen a gun. After the ordeal was over, 19 turned around his head and shifted his focus to 23. 19 then turned his gun towards 23, pointing it at him, saying that it was the time to punish the criminal who killed 56. 23 just quietly looked around, assessing the situation he was in. While keeping the gun pointed at 23, 19 started to praise and gloat him that how amazing he was in terms of fighting. 19. Showing his creepy smile, he laughed and said that it didn't matter how strong a human was, a single human body could not win a complete war. In modern society, the thing that actually matters is brains and weapons. Without saying any words, 23 just quietly raised up his hands as if he was surrendering. 19 was quite taken aback by this straightforward action from 23, but then he quietly showed his big, creepy grin again. He mocked 23, that even if he was such a great fighter, after all, he was also scared in front of a gun. So 19 asked, that was he planning on surrendering? 23 just kept his mouth silent without uttering a single word. 19 said that it did not matter if he was planning on surrendering or not, because he was going to kill him there and there because his crime of wasting his time and bullets was really severe. Saying this holding his gun towards 23's head, he started to walk toward him. While cornering him to the cliff end, 19 said that it was his mistake of trying to flee a cliffside without any kind of escape. But 23 refused, saying that it was exactly as he was planning to do this. A faint whirring sound could be heard in the background. Hearing this, 19 started to shout that what the heck was this noise? But the whirring sound kept on getting stronger and stronger until something appeared out of the air over their heads. 19 started to look up at the sky in confusion as to what was that. But 23 kept on looking at it as if he had all of this planned ahead already. A big drone with a gun's attachment appeared in front of them, 19 shouting, "What the heck was that?" One of the goons talked to each other, asking that what the heck was that? Was it a small aircraft? Saying that he started to move forward to see what it was. The moment he stepped forward, a bullet instantly pierced his temple right in between his eyebrows. And within a moment, the goon instantly fell down beside 19. 19 instantly turned around to see what the heck had happened. But the only thing he saw was his dead man with a bullet to his forehead. Both of the other goons started to scream in terror after watching this scene in front of them. The drone's gun attachment was hissing smoke in order to dissipate the heat released from the gunshot. Both of the goons started to run for their lives, screaming in the process. But in the drone's HUD, it just saw both of the goons as motion detections and selected them as target to be pursued. It then instantly started to fly and chase behind both of them in order to eliminate its target. 23 narrated that this device was known as the Mad Pursuer or the Crazy Chaser. It relentlessly tracked anything that moved. Both of them kept shouting and screaming and running for someone to help them while the drone kept on getting closer and closer to them. Locking into its target, the drone started to charge its cannons. Relentlessly without mercy, the drone started to shoot all of its bullets into both of the goons. Although both of them were killed, 19 and 23 were locked into one stalemate position, not moving at all. Seeing this, 23 realized something really shocking about 19. The man standing in front of him, whose name was 19, did not move at all from his spot since the drone showed up, which means this man already knew about this crazy chaser, mad pursuer drone. 23 just stayed still and didn't say a word. 19 also responded the same way by saying, staying silent. After killing both of the goons back there, the drone came back looking towards 19 and 23 who were still standing still. The drone kept on sweeping over them while 19 kept his arm up along with 23. 19 started to think, did 23 lure in this crazy chaser? But how could someone like a slave would even know about this? But at this point, none of that mattered because this person 23 crossed a line. That's why he needed to be killed. 23 broke the silence by saying that 19 already knew how this drone works, and that also meant that he would know that if he pulled the trigger, then the one who is going to get shot is 19 himself. 19 once again got reminded of the situation he was stuck in. The drone kept on flying past their heads, but with that little amount of noise, it instantly turned around its gun towards both of them. 19 started to console himself that 23 might be bluffing here because that tiny of a movement would not be able to trigger the crazy chaser. 23 then taunted him to go ahead and test it if he felt like he was thinking that it was a bluff. 19 once again got caught in a stalemate with this guy. 23 further taunted him. That was he going to shout insults like for once more. But he knew that 19 was not going to do anything like that because he was too scared to even move his mouth. Absolutely enraged, on promise to himself that he will kill him right now. Because 23 did the grave crime of insulting him, the Lord 19. That was a crime worthy of death. He again consoled to himself that moving just a few centimeters should be absolutely safe. In that exact moment, the crazy chaser drone came flying over 19's head. But he stopped himself because there was a possible chance that it could actually react and kill him. This made him realize and stopped him in his tracks with sweat flowing over his forehead. The drone went and started to fly over 23's head. 23 also didn't know that if such a small trigger was able to make the drone react to it, but all he could do was wait and watch. Because if he kept on waiting for a little longer, then soon Crazy Chaser will think the job was done and then disappear. But if that does happen, then the moment the drone goes away, 19 will start to shoot on 23. But even if he shoots, 23 will not spare any mercy, taking down 19. The Crazy Chaser drone makes another round over both of their heads once more. Each second, 19 started to panic more and more. His finger was starting to shake around the triggers. He was wondering what he should do now. But 23 kept on waiting patiently without making even a single movement. But suddenly, an enormous gust of wind started to form within the forest. The formed gust of wind started to flow towards both 19 and 23. This big gust of wind caused something important to happen. This big gust of wind caused the entire drone to get off-centered and look away. Seeing this, 19 knew that this was his only chance that he was going to get. He instantly started to empty his barrel on the 23 without wasting a moment. Most of the bullet went past 23, but one of it grazed a little bit on his shoulder. This impact caused him to move a lot in some direction. Looking at this, the drone instantly turned around its head to detect the motion that it just felt. 23 realized that the eyes of the drones was now on him. In the HUD of the drone, it selected 23 as a character whose motion was detected and chosen as a target locked for pursuit. 23 immediately turned around his head, planning to run as fast as possible, digging 1 foot down into the ground after another, but if he launched himself forward with his maximum speed. By this point, the drone had completely chosen 23 as a target to be eliminated. It started to empty its cannons by shooting bullets onto 23, who was running away by now. The drone kept on shooting on 23 while he kept on running for his life. Some bullets were crossing by his face while some bullets were grazing on his body. Turning his foot really aggressively, he started to run in a different direction. 23 then jumped off the cliff into the water to escape the drone. But the drone also instantly realized where he was trying to go. The drone once again started shooting on the 23, but this time one of the bullets went and got struck into his right thigh. 23 started to groan in pain from the bullet stuck in its leg. Seeing his mission fulfilled, 19 kept on giving a really big, creepy smile. Blood started to splatter out of the one-shot wound. With the gunshot wound and other body wounds, he went to escape into the salty water. But it was more like he was screaming for his life while he fell into the water. He realized his head was about to hit the water first, which was really dangerous. In the midair, he curled himself up into a newborn's position in order to minimize the impact upon water. But even then, he kept on screaming as he fell down into the water. But he scrunched his eyes and started to prepare himself for the impact. 23 fell onto the surface of the water, creating an enormous splash around everything. But the Crazy Chaser drone also saw him crashed inside the water. It soared down from the cliff, shooting a bunch of bullets all at once. The bullets hit the surface of the water with a large splash with an explosion. Underwater, some of the bullets crossed by 23, many of them grazing him as they went by. 23 groaned in pain from all those bullet wounds. But the drone kept on swirling on the surface of the water, waiting for 23 to surface out of the water. But 23 just swam deeper in order to stay clear of the drone's scanner and protect himself. The drone's scanner kept on beeping for a few moments, looking out for 23. After a few moments, it went back of the cliff, saying that the execution was complete. It went on to fly away, repeatedly saying that execution was complete. While 19 was standing there, still with his arms still held up, after the drone flew away, 19 let down his arms and gave out a sigh of relief. Looking at the spot where 23 had jumped into the water, 19 saw and thought that he might be dead already. He again began to show his creepy smile. While holding his gun to his head, he started laughing loudly, thinking that how could a mere slave dare to defy the Lord 19? He started laughing even more like a maniac. Over at some other place near some rocks and water, a small shadow of a human being began to surface to the surface of the water. It was 23 poking his head out of the water to see everyone whether they had gone or not. In the next moment, a sharp pain instantly hit his body. Upon looking closer, he realized that he has been bleeding severely from multiple places along his body. He opened the bandana mask that he was tying around his face to cover it. Using the cloth as a tourniquet, he tied it around his wound in order to stop bleeding. 23 got angry on himself that how he was caught off guard, because of which the bullet was still inside his body. His first priority was to get somewhere safe, get the bullet out of his body and treat it somehow. So he weakly started to swim near one of the shores while still bleeding from his wounds. While swimming, 23 started to hear some wave noises behind him. Behind him, some creature was swimming towards him at rapid speed, causing waves. Realizing that something was coming behind him, he instantly turned around to see what it was. Seeing the fin come out of the water like that, he realized that it could have been just one thing. 23 got absolutely shocked at this realization. This creature was none other than Great White Shark lunging towards 23 in order to eat him. 23 was only able to look at the shock and horror without being able to do anything. But just before the shark closed its jaw around 23, he instantly swam out of the mouth, saving himself. 23 started to wonder that did this shark come to him because he smelled his blood? Because the creature which appeared before 23 was considered the apex of the food chain, the absolute predator. The great white shark. Its form is made like a torpedo to gain least amount of drag from water, and it can move through the sea at an astounding rate of 50 kilometers per hour. The bite forces of such white sharks can easily cross 1 ton. And as 23 was monologuing this, the shark opened its mouth to eat 23. But just as it was trying to close its mouth, 23 again swam to the side, saving himself. But unfortunately, with such great exertions, 23 started to lose air. As a setting second attack, the shark readied to its tail towards 23, moving in his direction. The shark hit its tail on 23 like a giant whiplash, throwing him far away in the water. This head to the stomach caused him to spit out all the air he was saving in his mouth. While the shark was circling 23, he desperately tried to swim up to gain some air. After reaching to the surfed face, 23 gasped really loudly, taking in as much air as possible. After completely filling his lungs with air, he once again dipped himself into water to see where the shark was. The shark was just like a shadow in the water. 23 puts up his head to take in fresh air once more and dives in. And there he could see the great white shark looking at him through the water, ready to hunt him at any given chance. After getting into position, 23 spread out his arms and legs like a T-pose. He started to gather a lot of mana around his body, almost surrounding himself with it. He was doing this because sharks are ambush predators, and they do not like when their prey notices them back. Using all of the mana surrounding him, he shouted out only one thing to the shark: to scram away. The shark gets really surprised by this influx of power surrounding that human, but the blood from his legs keeps on seeping out without stopping. And the smell of the blood is what puts the shark back into predator mode. The shark again opens his jaw big and wide, charging towards 23 to attack him. Realizing that the shark once again got active because it smelled blood, he put himself into defensive position using his arms. But this time he planned on attacking the vitals instead. But this time the thing that 23 was aiming for was the tip of the shark's nose. He charged up his punch in order to hit the part which is called the Lorenzini's organ. The shark kept on charging towards 23. With all of its energy, it attacked the tip of the shark's nose, which was its weakest point. He kept on applying his force on the nose, wondering whether if it even worked or not. But the shark kept on pushing back on 23's punch without a care. Breaking 23's form, the shark went and hit the stomach, pushing him away. With the same continuous force, the shark pushed 23 out of the water, throwing him few feet into the air. While falling towards the water, 23 realized that it was not going to work because there was too much of a difference in their physique. With a loud crash, he fell onto the surface of water, splashing a large amount of water everywhere. All of his wounds open, especially on the shoulder, causing him to bleed even more. Using all of his remaining energy, he pushed himself out of the water, gasping for air. After regaining his sanity, he started to look around the water, trying to search for the shark, wondering where it went. But the shark was speeding towards 23, unbeknownst of him, at extremely high speed. But fortunately, he felt the presence of the shark behind him and reacted in time. Opening his big mouth, the shark tried to capture 23, but he kept on flapping his arms, desperately trying to get away. After flapping, he was barely able to get away, but the shark was able to bite onto 23's t-shirt, and within a moment he was pulled into the water by it. While being dragged into the depths of the water, 23 realized that in front of the fierce ruler of the ocean, any kind of human strength is absolutely pointless. He started to lose air from his mouth once more. He slowly began to lose consciousness. Giving up, he realized that there was no other way, nothing he could do to save himself from here. 23 gave himself up, submitted himself to the shark, thinking that he does not need to desperately cling to life. His eyes went dark, but after some time, someone called out to him, "Wake up, George." He was confused, asked around that who was talking to him. 23 saw a fake of a faceless girl telling him to promise something. Unable to remember, he started thinking around what promise was this girl talking about. Now, with a full face visible, the girl told George that to promise him no matter what happens, he is going to return back alive. Gaining back his consciousness, 23 realized that the person to whom he made this promise to was Sophia. Gathering up his strength, he put all of his fingers on the shark's body. Now, grabbing its body with both of his hands, 23 started to ride down the water with it. Clenching his muscles and his punch, he thought to himself, was he going to break his promise to Sophia once more? Gathering all of his aura into his fist, he thought doing something like that would absolutely be pathetic. Clenching his teeth, gathering his aura, 23 was ready once more. 23 pulled back his fists, readying himself to attack the shark's face once more. With all of his strength, 23 punched the shark's right eye. Once wasn't enough, he started charging his fish once more. He repeatedly punched the shark in the eye over and over and over again. At this point, the shark's eyes were red and bloodied, but it still was not letting go of 23's t-shirt. 23 groaned at how the physical prowess between them was already so vastly different. But even then, the water kept dragging on his attacks, robbing his power. He kept on hitting the sensitive nose area, but even that did not work. But even after all this, he realized that there was no way to damage the ruler of the sea. Not a single one. So instead of attacking the shark, he ripped his t-shirt instead to free himself. Finally free, he started to swim backwards to safety. He grabbed onto the shark's fins to stay with it. Now both he and the shark were swimming downwards the ocean. He realized that the shark was not going to go down until he did this. He used all of his aura around his hand to make kind of a blade and shoved it inside the shark's gills. The shark started screaming in pain because unlike the outside body, the inside of the shark is really soft. 23 kept on taunting the shark. That how did it felt having his cuts apart while he was continuously rotating his wrist. He put his hand even deeper. It was up to his elbow by this point. Screaming in pain, the shark started to swim haywire in all directions. 23 kept on grabbing onto the shark's gills, absolutely determined to not let it shake him off. Using more of his strength, he started to dig even deeper, ripping apart all the shark's guts. He pulled out one of the lungs capillaries out from the shark's gills. Now, completely disoriented, the shark started to swim towards the bottom. Using the shark's flipping tail as a catapult, he used it to jump out of the water to gain some air. He started to swim upwards, whereas the shark was losing its mind and flipping around in the bottom. 23 was able to come to the surface and loudly gasped, coughing out water and breathing in air. He kept on panting for a little bit longer, regaining all of his strength back. But the injured shark also jumped out of the water behind him. 23 looked back in horror, worried about how the hell was this injured shark still chasing after him. The shark started to swim towards 23 with its jaw open wide. 23 kept on looking in shock about what was going to happen. Without any mercy, the shark kept on swimming towards 23 with its jaw still open wide. But then a moment later, the shark instantly ceased all of its movement and stopped in its tracks. 23 couldn't understand what just happened right now in front of him. The shark started fall down in water, crashing in it with just inches away from 23's face. It slowly started to sink inside water with air and blood bubbling from it. Losing all of its strength, the shark kept on falling down the ocean like a rock. 23 kept on looking at all of this with shock on his face. Realizing that the worry and the source of danger was over, he started to breathe in peace. After gaining his sanity, he said to himself that this time he was saved by Sophia, her words. Turning around to see where the shoreline was, he understood that with his brawl with the shark, he had been pulled way deep into the sea. He started swimming towards the shoreline, repeating his current goals. First, to get back to the industrial waste island quickly, and then to treat all his sustained wounds. But just one flap later, all of his lights instantly went out, blanking him out like a stone. With his head face down, he passed out unconscious on the surface of the sea for a little while. He jerked his head up, gasping for air. He kept on coughing for a little while, realizing that he absolutely has no energy left. He was shivering. His body felt really cold, and he had lost too much blood already. Slowly and slowly, he started to worry that would he be even able to go to the shoreline in this condition? As he was busy swimming, some sort of light started to hit him from the back of his head. He turned around to see what it was. It was the early sun showing its first rays. The entire night was over, and it was early morning. 23 sighed, thinking that how it was morning already. He looked around to find a log that was floating near him. He realized that this log was going to be his saving grail. 23 began to swim towards the log, grabbing it. Using it as a leverage, he pulled himself out of the water. After a little struggle, he rests himself on the log, breathing heavily, regaining his strength back. Even with the warmth of the sunlight hitting him, he kept on shaking and shivering from the cold. He kept on clenching his teeth, shivering to generate some heat. Fortunately, the intensity of the sunlight increased a little bit more to give him some heat. Weakly, he looked towards the horizon. 23 kept on repeating the thoughts of how he was able to survive once more. The log kept on floating till it washed up on the shore. 23. Weekly started to crawl from the log onto the land, slowly and slowly. He kept on hurrying himself up, saying that how it has already been 5 hours since he took a bullet and that he needed to extract it quickly and get some treatment. But regardless of how much effort he put in, his body itself gave up. Losing all of his energy, his head slammed onto the ground. He realized that it was getting really bad because his body temperature kept on falling down. But just as he had lost his consciousness, we see the silhouette of a person in black clothing standing on a cliff. Unable to discern the face of the person due to his blurry eyesight, he started to wonder if this person was an enemy or a friend. The mysterious person kept on walking towards 23, but his body refused to obey his commands and just laid unconscious on the ground. The person gave out his hand for 23 to hold, saying that was able to hear him, and asked him what his name was. Struggling with his identity, he went on to think what his actual name was. The thought instantly put him back to a flashback where he was in the military special training, shooting a target board. Within a moment, 23 emptied all of his magazine onto the board. Like a miracle, every single one of those bullets went and hit the middle of the head. While standing, someone called out to him from behind. A young recruit with a blonde hair ran to George, asking whether he was George Tsai or not. He said that his name was Lowry and he was joining Gauche starting today. But George just walked past him, grumpily saying that he had no intention of becoming chummy with anyone. This reaction hurt the new recruit very much. While George was walking away, the new recruit said that both of his parents, his father and mother, were killed by the terrorist, and the one who avenged his parents for him was none other than his idol George. And he shouted that his life's goal was to become strong like him. For him, Mr. George was his hero. Unable to reply, 23 just kept on staring at the new recruit. Turning around, 23 kept on walking, saying that he did not do anything special, it was just his mission. The new recruit was just stunned at the humble nature of 23, kept staring. Few days later, there was a big bombardment at the camp location of 23 and his comrades. All of the tanks kept on shouting to their HR that they were under artillery bombardment from the armed terrorist organization, shouting that they have multiple casualties at their hands. While the enemy tanks kept on forwarding towards the camps, they kept on shouting that they needed treatment immediately. Injured soldiers kept on pouring into the camps carried by the med team, shouting out their vitals, desperately trying to find out the way to save them. In the field hospital of the camps, all of the beds were completely filled with war victims injured from the blast that happened earlier. George, aka 23, came into the room while one of the med team told him that he had a major injury on his soldier. But 23 refused that it was something minor. The next moment, he heard someone calling him really weakly. The new recruit was absolutely injured by the bombs, with both of his eyes lost and multiple severe injuries. He called out 23, asking that he was standing there. Wasn't he? 23 shouted out to the new recruit to stop talking and rest. The medics shouted out that he had a large caliber sharp nail, which was penetrated in his abdomen, and there were lots of fractures on his pelvis bones as well. While shaking and shivering, the new recruit started crying, saying that after everything, he was unable to reach to George level. 23 could not even say anything, he just stood there silently. The new recruit started crying that he was scared. He was scared of dying. He didn't want to die. But 23 answered coldly that everybody dies someday. He consoled the new recruit that there was nothing to fear because life and death had no meaning. One of the medics shouted out to him that if he could move instead of talking, he should help to carry the stretcher to the operating room and to compress the wounds with the gauze. 23 asked what was she talking about. She shouted that since they were short-handed, they had to use everyone at hand. The name of the doctor was introduced to be Military Dr. Sophia. She exclaimed that she was going to save everyone over there. In the operating theater, one of the nurses shouted that the new recruit's vital signs were severely declining, and at this rate, he could die. But Dr. Sophia shouted back to her, saying that what was a military doctor doing panicking in front of the wounded? While performing a strong CPR, she said that since he was her patient now, she is never going to let him die. Without stopping, Dr. Sophia kept on performing the CPR, while 23 just kept on watching. 23 could not do anything but stare in awe in the face of such unyielding person. But the time passes by and the sun sets down. Outside one of the camps, 23 was standing in between the alleyways where two medical recruits were praising Dr. Sophia, saying that she was so amazing that she was able to save everyone. So they agreed that the rumor was true about a doctor who became one at 17 and traveled between battlefields trying to save everyone. 23 reminded himself of what the doctor's name was again. But in the next moment, someone clinked a bottle of wine on his arm. On front of him, Dr. Sophia was standing holding 2 bottles of wine, saying that one bottle was for him, which was his hush money. Upon asking what the hush money was for, she said that she used someone to help with the medical procedures and she could get in trouble for it. After saying that much, Dr. Sophia started to drink in front of 23. After drinking a lot with one breath, she took a loud gasp saying how bitter this was. 23 was just surprised looking at her. Changing the topic, he asked, "Will the new recruit will survive?" She's saying that the chances were less, that's why she cannot promise anything. But she raised his spirit saying that she has seen many miracles recoveries. Thinking for a bit, 23 answer, that wasn't all of this really futile? Really futile, because the moment she healed all of them, they will instantly go back to the death zone the next moment. So 23 repeated his question. Wasn't all of this futile? Dr. Sophia answered with a determined tone that it did not matter because at the end of the day, she wanted to save people. After saying that, she just went back to drinking. A moment later, one of the male nurses came out running, searching for Dr. Sophia. Upon hearing her name, Sophia hid the wine bottle at light speed. Seeing her, the male nurse shouted that the new recruit had gained his consciousness. So both of them got shocked at hearing this revelation. So 23 just kept on standing there while Dr. Sophia and the male nurse went to check up on new recruit. Dr. Sophia did a small checkup on the new recruit. Immediately after the emergency checkup, she asked him whether his wound was okay and how was he feeling. He said that he was okay, but the wounds were still hurting quite a bit. 23 came in to talk to the new recruit, but just stood there unable to say anything. 23 started to remember the old things like how he was crying, that he was about to die, or how Dr. Sophia said that it did not matter that the recruits went into the battle immediately because she wanted to save them. He just saw what a bright smile she had upon seeing the new recruit okay. 23 just kept on staring without any emotions, surprised at the interaction before him. A little bit later, Dr. Sophia was redressing the wound on 23's shoulder. With a close inspection, she said that the progress was good because the swelling had subsided, and there was no sign of any infection, and the recovery was complete. Making her hand sign as a drinking cup, Dr. Sophia said that if he was obliged, then he could buy her a drink. With a cold, calculative face, he asked that what kind of penalty was this. She shouted that why did he think that drinking with her was a penalty? Hearing this, the entire battalion started to cheer and wail, shouting that how close both of them were being. Some of the soldiers started to joke that maybe they should have gotten a bit more injured. One of them shouted that they want to buy her a drink. Another one of the recruits sneered and laughed that they had to invite both of them because Mr. 23 could not be left out. 23 started to get up and Dr. Sophia gave out a big sigh at how energetic the entire battalion was. While he was getting up, someone called out to 23. He was trying to say something to 23. Upon going closer, he said that he has decided something. He said that he had decided that he will be discharging himself from the Special Force Ghost. 23 agreed that this was a wise choice because in this field of line with his abilities, his death was inevitable. The new recruit was a little bit saddened at how direct 23 was, but he agreed that this was for the best because this was honest. He said that this was an extra life that Dr. Sophia had saved for him. That's why he needed to spend it carefully. 23 just listened to him silently. In a minute, all of the recruits were laughing around with Dr. Sophia. The new recruit looked at this and said that how surprising it was because he expected something like this to be way more barren and disorganized. 23 also agreed that this kind of an atmosphere was really rare for him as well. He also realized that the reason for this laughter and chaos was none other than Dr. Sophia herself. It was her big, bright smile which cheered everyone up. Walking out of the room, he once again agreed that little bit of laughter and happiness echoes a lot on places like battlefields, due to which even soldiers get a brief moment of respite. Little did he know that this little respite, is going to be his last. A few days later, 2 soldiers brought in an injured person wrapped up in a stretcher. One guy shouted that this was an emergency patient. Surprised and confused, she asked what the heck happened. The officer said that this recruit suffered from cardiac arrest and needed to be resuscitated really fast. Looking at the patient for a moment, she ordered everyone to run to the operating room immediately. Holding the patient, Dr. Sophia, and one of the soldiers ran to the operating theater, crossing past 23. 23 kept on looking the patient that Dr. Sophia was taking in. It was a bald man with a burn injury on his right temple. He then turned his eyes towards the officer who brought this patient in the first place. A few times later, both of them go out of the camps to walk. 23 realized that all of those burn marks, all of her His bodies were not just trauma injuries. Those injuries were burnt arc marks from high-voltage current being run through the body. Straightforward, he asked the officer whether that person earlier was from the enemy spies or not. The officer praised him for being sharp-eyed as always. 23. Said that it was not like him to put this man to cardiac arrest because usually he just makes everyone spit out information after gauging their limits. The officer started to blame the electrical operator for screwing up the voltage and claimed responsibility, but 23 refused. He said that what was the need for resuscitation of this person? The officer said that there were tons of information that he wanted to spit out of the spy. Realizing that the officer was not being himself, he asked once more in a deep tone, "Who was this person?" The officer just stayed silent for a few moments. Hesitatingly, the officer answered that this guy was a dark money and ammunition supplier and underworld agent whose name was Saeed Arash, and he was also an Ignite executive. 23 was absolutely surprised at hearing this. Clenching his fists, he remembered the organization Ignite. He kept on remembering this because 23 had never forgotten this name even for a moment. The story of Ignite begins 10 years ago when 23 was still a little kid. We see him as a kid standing in front of a fruit shop. He calls on to his father who was holding his sister's hands as well to buy some of this for him. Sister also got really happy upon seeing the fruit. 23's dad, with a big smile and thumbs up, agreed to buy some and try it. 23's dad was an workaholic father who took him and his sister out for the first time in a while. Although this outing lasted for only 5 days, it was one of the most irrepressible memories he had. Really happy memory for his father as well. Or at least that how it was supposed to be. A big explosion occurred where the family was standing. A terrorist group has attacked the civilians with all of them running away for their lives. 23. And his family were stuck in a random terrorist attack which occurred on that day which caused casualty up to 2,000. 23 was absolutely stunned and stood in one place while everybody was shouting around him. He just saw that his dad and sister were brutally crushed under one of the rocks. But inside the rock he could see his sister's hand as well, still holding the tiger fruits. Desperately, he started to pull out her hands from under the rock trying to rescue her. After pulling for a bit, her hand came free and he was smacked back on the ground. It turned out that her sister did not come out. It was just her arm that came out. 23's face got twisted in agony, fear, and a multitude of emotions. Still holding her hand, her sister let go of the tiger fruit that she was eating just now. 23 kept on walking somewhere with lots of injured people crying around them and someone shouting something over the radio. It was the president addressing something regarding the terrorism. The president addressed that from this day they must declare war. The war against the worst terrorists. Just then, 23 steps on a piece of newspaper. The terrorists who took far too many lives of innocent civilians. Against the terrorist group Ignite. Ignite will never be forgiven. 23 returns back from the flashback. The officer added that since the terrorism 10 years ago, they could not catch the Ignite's tail. But this time they were finally able to find out their hideout location. 23 got absolutely surprised at hearing this information. The officer tries to give George, or 23, some insider information before the official orders comes down. The official order that the next mission is going to be Operation Eliminate Ignite. 23 got absolutely tensed once hearing this info. Remembering his past, he loathed how weak he was back then, but this time, now it is different. Finally, the moment had come. But the next moment, the officer hears a scream on his radio. One of the other soldiers shouted out to Beck to respond to tell him what happened. The soldiers shouted that Saeed had disappeared, taking along Sophia too. The news came as a shock to both of them. 23 was once again shocked and stunned, in one place wondering what will happen. Sophia was walking through some sort of a forest with thick cover while looking up. Outside the military camp perimeter, Sophia was being led by Saeed to somewhere. But accidentally, she stumbled her leg on a root coming out of the ground. This caused her to fall face first into the ground. But absolutely coldly, Saeed told her that there was no time to stop now, and she needs to get up and start walking now. But Sophia asked him to be a little bit reasonable to let her get up on her own pace. But without any mercy, he put a knife near her face, threatening her. Kneeling down, he said that they were already far from the camp perimeter by now, which means by now he does not see any more value in her as an hostage. Saying this, he kept shining his blade in front of her face. Seeing no choice, she got up and both of them continued to walk. The entire time he kept the knife close to her back. Sophia just silently agreed with him and kept on walking. Sed kept on clicking his teeth after hearing some static from his earpiece. Someone from the earpiece asked him that where should he land. He answered that the landing coordinate was SG-19. The forest cap was a little bit narrow, but he should be able to get down just fine. Sophia understood that this was actually not an earpiece, but rather a radio which was embedded in his molar, and wondered just how many devices he has hidden in his body. Then a flashback of few hours is shown. In the barracks hospital, Dr. Sophia tells the nurse to put on the patch to check the vital signs. Looking at the EKG monitor, she realized that it has been quite some time since the cardiac arrest, and resuscitation is quite hard. In the EKG lines, she suddenly saw something weird. She saw that the EKG lines were completely normal and thought that maybe they came back just now. But the thing that was weird was they had not even done anything up till now and the pulse was way too rhythmic. But a harsh reality hit her instantly. She turned around to the nurse to tell her that he was actually faking the cardiac arrest. And watch out for him. But the next moment, lots of blood splattered on her face. Before she could say anything, she heard a muffled scream. Saeed had used a scalpel knife to slice off the nurse's throat. The nurse kept on spitting out blood, drowning in her own blood. But Saeed kept on watching the doctor coldly. Stunned from shock, Dr. Sophia was not able to even say a word, and just stayed stun-locked. Dropping the dying nurse behind, Saeed told her to not scream and said that there was a device implanted in his chest which suppressed his heartbeats. And with decent tech like this, he can suppress his heartbeat to the point where most equipment cannot detect it. But the nurse behind fell down and passed out and died in her own pool of blood. Putting down his scalpel, he says that this is a very convenient device, but it has a very big downside. The downside is after using it, he gets really nauseous. Dr. Sophia was still not able to utter even a single word. Saeed added that this is why he did not want any loud noise. Because if someone yells at him when he had a bad wake-up from sleep, then he feels like killing them. And he also wanted to use her as an insurance to escape the space or a hostage. Putting the blade close to her neck, he asked whether she wanted to come with him. It was her choice, of course, because it did not matter if she came or not because he was going to be fine even if he does not have a hostage. Dr. Sophia realized that he was going to kill her as well if she refused to go with him. So now we arrive at the present. Dr. Stoffi has started a monologue herself that the terrorist group Ignite had the technical ability beyond all expectations, but it was not the actual scary part. What's actually scary was for the objectives. They were cold enough to implant devices in the human body without hesitation, which means taking a life does not mean anything to them. She came to the conclusion that if she does not kill him right now, she was going to get killed. Putting her hands inside her coat pocket. She had only one chance at this, because as someone who had worked on battlefields, she always carried an emergency medication with her. The medication was morphine. This drug normally has a strong pain-killing and sedative effect. While it is really good at removing pain and suffering, even a slight overdose gave a huge risk of coma. The morphine which she had on her was a really high-concentrated one in which even 4 millisieverts of it was lethal. Now, she had her syringe ready with morphine loaded in. Then all of them started to hear helicopter noises surrounding the entire forest. Dr. Sophie realized that this was her chance. Pulling out her syringe from her coat, she pointed it towards Saeed. She took it and jabbed the needle right into his neck. Saeed also looked around to see what had just been done. In one stroke, she emptied the entire syringe into his neck. Within seconds, Saeed lost all sense of self and started to blabber nonsense. Sophia was sure that she had succeeded this time. While spouting nonsense, Saeed lost his sense of balance and fell down on his head. Sophia took a small breath of relief. Saeed had fallen down, now twitching and shivering from all of the morphine injected into his body. Sophia wiped her sweat thinking that was she able to succeed? Was 10 ml was too much? But the next moment he raised his hand towards her and grabbed Dr. Sophia's neck, choking her out. Holding her neck as a support, Saeed started to stand up. He complimented her on using morphine because it was not a bad idea. But it did not matter to him because he was already resistant to these kinds of drugs because he kept on overdosing on them since childhood. While being choked out, Sophia thought that something like this is not possible at all. Holding out the scalpel to her, he said that having morphine once in a while, it actually felt good. Holding her neck and bringing the scalpel near her, he said that it was time to dismantle her. And he kept on mocking her that she won't be able to get any painkillers because she had already used all of them on him, and it was her own fault now. Saeed lost all sense of self and started to blabber nonsense. Sophia was sure that she had succeeded this time. While spouting nonsense, Saeed lost his sense of balance and fell down on his head. Sophia took a small breath of relief. Saeed had fallen down, now twitching and shivering from all of the morphine injected into his body. Sophia wiped her sweat thinking that was she able to succeed? Was 10 mLs was too much? But the next moment he raised his hand towards her and grabbed Dr. Sophia's neck, choking her out. Holding her neck as a support, Saeed started to stand up. He complimented her on using morphine because it was not a bad idea. But it did not matter to him because he was already resistant to these kinds of drugs, because he kept on overdosing on them since childhood. While being choked out, Sophia thought that something like this is not possible at all. Holding out the scalpel to her, he said that having morphine once in a while, it actually felt good. Holding her neck and bringing the scalpel near her, he said that it was time to dismantle her. And he kept on mocking her that she won't be able to get any painkillers because she had already used all of them on him, and it was her own fault now.